Well, welcome to this edition of the Qredible Summer broadcast. We're so excited to have Joe Hickey back. Joe was on an episode of the Qredible broadcast a few months ago. Fantastic background, fantastic things that he's doing in the world of hemp, and excited for you to be here again to have kind of another conversation. So welcome, Joe.
Oh, well, thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed our last conversation.
You're one of our favorite hemp guys, Joe. I'll tell you that.
Well, you're one of my favorite interviewers.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Agree.
Yeah.
So, Joe, because there will be people who haven't listened to your first episode with us, just give us a little bit of an overview of, who you are, where you come from, and what kind of work you do.
Well, I'm from Kentucky, grew up here, and been here all my life. I got started in the hemp industry by accident. I found this document that was the 1942 Kentucky Hemp Growers Co-op, and that's kind of what got me, my toes stuck in the water. I started looking into it, found that my grandfather grew it, and all this information over 2 years, from 92 to 94, I collected all this information and met with the governor in 94, and he formed a task force off of, after I met with him. And then a few months, we were starting to get a lot of PR because, back then hemp and marijuana were just synonymous.
Yeah.
And so I get a call from Woody Harrelson, and Woody comes in and he said, "Look, I love what you're doing. How can I help?" And so, over the next 6 years, it was 2 years later, we decided to test the law. Woody planted 4 hemp seeds, got him locked up. So that next 4 years was just a great PR campaign. And, and we did a lot of events, more than, there's a lot of stuff that happened that I won't, talk about now. But in 98, we started the company called Kinex up in Canada, and we were the first decorticating and seed processing facility in North America. We only ran it 4 years because the DEA basically shut us down from importing into the United States. But then in 2000, we finally got Woody to trial. He was found not guilty. 2001, with the help of former Governor Louis Nunn, who was a longtime friend of mine, we got the bill passed here in Kentucky that allowed us to grow hemp whenever the federal legislation allowed it. So 2014, when it passed, we brought seed back from Canada that we had developed up there at Kinex and planted that the first year, and then started a company on the new technology. It's a lipid bond technology. We infuse any botanical in any lipid or aqueous solution. So that's what we're been working on for the last 4, 5, 6 years. So that's the Cliff Notes.
So the Woody Harrelson you're talking about, the
actor, yeah. But I tell
you just say that and met with the governor to talk to Woody Harrelson.
I'm telling you, Woody is, if he walked into your house, if you didn't know it was Woody, you'd just think he was a regular guy. He doesn't put on any airs. He does. We've been walking down the streets and, had guys walk, "Hey, we're having a party down the block here. And, if y'all want to come, and they walk away. And Woody said, "What do you think?" I said, "What?" We said, "Well, let's just stop by." So, I mean, he's just a regular dude. That's what everybody loves about him.
Yeah, I love that. And, what's really interesting to me is when I first started hearing about hemp, everybody thought hemp. Oh, they're talking about marijuana. They're talking about weed. So
right.
That was the first big stigma to get over, right?
Right.
Hey guys, there's a difference, right? And nobody knew the difference between the two.
No.
And it's now we're stuck. Now that okay, I think people get the difference now because of the emergence of the CBD industry and all that. And now it's Now there's like in the hemp world, there's like agricultural hemp, and then there's the hemp that's used for, the medicinal purposes and, that sort of thing. And that's something that you're really been focused on, is to kind of separate those two, and talk a little bit about that, because I think that is so important, but people don't understand what you're talking about a lot of times
Yeah,
when you're
no,
talking about
no.
agricultural hemp, including the politicians sometimes.
Well, no, and including a lot of writers, that are writing about all this, because you'll hear it called intoxicating hemp. Then hemp's not intoxicating. It's below 0.3. When they're talking about intoxicating hemp is legal to grow at below 0.3 THC, which is just, that's in and of itself crazy. Nobody's going to smoke a 0.3 or even a 1% THC when you've got 28 and 30% THC stuff. So that whole argument there is just crazy. But on the feed part of it, or separating the two, is,
well, in fairness, just for our listeners,
okay.
you can grow hemp with a high THC count. Not like 25-30%, but you can grow hemp with a high THC count, can't you? Because like I know that, well beyond 0.3 or even 1%, because I've seen that happen in Kentucky before, where the crops grew hot and THC levels spiked.
Well, but they'll burn it if it's they've destroyed crops here in Kentucky that were above 0.3. So no, that if you get above 0.3. That's why we're trying to get the federal legislation to go to 1, because at point, and here's the importance of that. There's a lot of variety.
One's nothing either. It's like,
right. One's nothing. Nobody's going to go out there and if they did, it wouldn't do anything for them. It'd be a wasted trip. But what we've got is some great genetics that are above 0.3 and below 1. That we could use for crossbreeding and for developing new varieties that we can't do right now, because anything above 0.3, if you develop a variety and it's 0.4 consistently, you can't use it. So, what I want to get back to is like the separation between industrial hemp and cannabinoids.
Yes,
and that's, to me, is the separation. It's like the difference between a logging company that's going out here and cutting all these trees down, and a nursery that's taking care of each and every tree that's out there and making sure that it's growing. So he's not doing, and so it's the same thing. One's an agricultural crop, one is a horticultural crop, and the farmers that are going to be out there growing it are not going to be growing. They're either going to be horticulturalist, or they're going to be doing an agricultural row cropping. And so the whole difference is this cannabinoid thing. So you're either cannabinoid farming or you're not. If you're cannabinoid farming, then even if it's below 0.3, because when they're talking about intoxicating hemp, what they're saying, what it is people are taking legal hemp that's at 0.3 or below, and they're taking a bunch of it, and then they're concentrating the THC out of it and making the THC. That's why they say it's legal. It's hemp derived. So basically, this is all about dilution and increasing, the THC level. Like if you take something like when you have a THC, or when you're harvesting hemp and you're processing it through ethanol, CO2, then you concentrate it to the point that it's hot, but it's considered what they call in process. So it's not going to be, it's not an end product. And so the processor takes that hot product and dilutes it down to the levels that is below 0.3. But what's happening is when they're concentrating it, instead of diluting it down, they're taking it down to a certain point and then stopping there and then adding its volume by volume. So if you can only have, let's just pick a number, or 1 gram in a certain size, well, then you just increase the size, and they're adding more THC to it, but it's still legal because according to weight and volume, it's legal. So it's a real convoluted, subject.
But Joe, my simple mind just is confused about this whole thing. So, like, if you grow hemp and you're growing it for agricultural purposes,
right?
Who cares what the cannabinoid level is? Because you're not going to be using them.
Well, here's the thing: if you're doing for fiber, Brian, it doesn't even get to the point where it has any seeds or buds in it, because when you're growing it for fiber, you want when the male plant flowers, it dies, and so the quality of that fiber just goes to hell. And then when the female gets pollinated, she starts pumping all this stuff into the fibers to strengthen the stalk to hold up the heavy seeds on top. So that fiber quality goes down. So when you cut it is just when the male plant pollinates. There's nothing else in there, for the fiber part of it. If you're growing for seed, you want it to pollinate because you want seeds. If you're growing marijuana, you don't want it to pollinate. Marijuana plants are all females. You don't see anybody going, "Hey, how's your male marijuana going?"
It's not good.
So that argument of, well, they'll plant high THC in a hemp field. That's the most ludicrous thing I ever heard in my life, because now it's going to pollinate, and now you're going to have seedy pot, and nobody can sell seedy pot.
Yeah.
And the thing about female plants is the reason you don't have any males is because the female plant starts producing all of this resin that would attract the pollen. That's sticky. So when she doesn't get pollinated, she just keeps putting more and more resin out, and that's what the sensimilia, are the people that are growing for marijuana. That's what they want. You look under the microscope and you see all these clear bubbles, and it looks like something under the water. It looks like but anyway, it's not anything that a regular farmer would even consider doing, because they're 2 different crops. And if you're going to be growing for marijuana, you don't want to be pollinated. So that whole thing about, well, we got to make sure we're testing these hemp fields for marijuana, and it's ludicrous. I mean, there's so many misnomers about this whole industry out there that it just drives a normal man crazy. And
I want to get into that as it relates to the hemp bill in a second. But I was taught by a hemp farmer. He showed me what a female hemp plant looks like and how to tell the difference. And I said, well, where's the male plant so I can compare? And he goes, "There's no male plants here." Right. It was like in my beginning of learning phase. He's like, no, we keep the males out of here. So that's like, but I mean, when this is what I'm really, really confused about is that, why aren't the politicians getting this? Like, when you look at the hemp bill, of course, it's all about, this cannabinoids, and particularly now it's got really confusing with the synthetics and the loopholes, that everybody's going through. And then the marijuana side is very upset about this because people are using intoxicating hemp now through these synthetics, and it's cutting into the margin and the sales into the THC market. But the politicians, this should be very easy for them to say, look, we're drawing a line right down the middle. There's the cannabinoid side of the business, and there's the non-cannabinoid side of the business. Isn't it that simple?
No,
look at the Farm Bill, and it's like there's nothing really in there.
Basically what it ought to be, if you're going to be growing a seed crop or a fiber crop, then you don't need to get tested. You don't have to register anywhere. You don't have to do anything. But if you're growing for cannabinoids, it's just like whatever. It doesn't make any difference if it's what THC level it is, anything else. You have to get a permit, and whatever area you're in, you have to go by their statutory or regulatory parameters. But yeah, you shouldn't. If you're a cannabinoid farmer, which would any cannabinoid, doesn't matter what it is, then you ought to be registered, because that you're talking about human consumption of basically a medicine or a supplement of some type.
Sure.
That people are going to be consuming.
Yeah.
And it should be regulated just like any other crop that's going to be consumed by humans.
So back in March when you were on, we were talking a little bit about the Industrial Hemp Act of 2023, which was Federal Bill S-980, and I've been following it ever since, because the Senate, introduced this bill in March of 2023. We were talking about this in 2024, but they had announced this last year, and the basis of this thing just seems to be stalled. So I know that the bill was introduced by a Democrat from Montana and Senator Mike Braun from Indiana, as a Republican. And after being introduced, the bill was read twice, referred to the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, Forestry, that whole group. Right. And then as of the latest information that I've seen, I've been trying to find information. The bill just seems to be sitting in committee and hasn't been advanced. It hasn't been voted on, hasn't been talked about. Now they've gained some co-sponsors, but that was kind of early on. So they've gained 4 co-sponsors, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. Now I recognize the Democrats and Republicans have some other issues they're dealing with, but the fact of the matter is this seems pretty easy, right? So the next step is for this bill to progress. Is it typically needs to be considered by the committee. It's got to be looked at, amended, and then possibly sent to the full Senate for consideration. But that doesn't seem to be moving.
Well, I think you've got a lot of things going on back in the back rooms that we're not privy to. I think.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think there's the marijuana contingents, which the big companies have got they've got a lot of lobbies and a lot of power and a lot of money.
Yeah, but what do they care about agricultural hemp? Seriously, what
they don't. It's not. It's the. That's the thing that's happening is the agricultural hemp is getting hung up with the cannabinoid part of it.
Yeah, but that's the part that's driving me nuts.
But the people that are doing what you want to call intoxicating hemp, that are concentrating everything, don't want they want to they're in a gray area right now. They want to stay in that gray area, and they want to stay gray as long as possible, because that's where it's like the prohibition, the gray area is where everybody made money. So I think there's stuff going on there that
So Joe, by getting all this caught up in all this BS politics and all this stuff going on, I mean, what is this really robbing America of? What is this? When we look at the benefits?
Putting off the inevitable is all they're doing. Because I mean, this genie is not going to go back in the bottle. There's 23 states that have legalized medical, and I don't know how many of them are recreational. But I was at a conference had a meeting with some folks that were at a cannabis conference up in Ohio, and hell, they've legalized. They've been against hemp, and last year they had a hemp bill, and this year now you can grow 6 plants of marijuana in your backyard if you want to, and you can possess 2.5 ounces of marijuana. So they're just putting off the inevitable is all that's happening right now, and they're hurting the hemp industry. Well, and something else that I'd like to talk about is this FDA is putting a 2 ppm, 2 parts per million. That's like 2 inches and 23 miles to get context to it. But they're setting the level that you can feed animals at 2 parts per million. Now, arsenic is 50 parts per million. Mercury is 30 and lead is 2, the same as the THC in animal feed, and it's so crazy. The Farm Bill has it set at 0.3. 0.3 is 3,000 parts per million. 0.3 is 3,000, and that's what it says in the Farm Bill. But the FDA says it's 0.002, 2 parts per million, or it might be 3 zeros in front of it. Who knows? But well, somebody knows. but it's ludicrous. But now, see, what's happened is, and I see both sides of this. The industry has this, I'll call it consternation, because it's not really a fight, it's a difference of opinion. The one side has spent 3 years and $300,000 and went through all these studies to feed laying hens. And so what happened is they're looking to get it approved, but now the other side of it is that they're looking at it the same way that this 0.3 got set up as an arbitrary number, and we're trying to get it to 1%, but we're not being able to do it because once you get a benchmark set, it's hard to get it moved, is what they think. So, or what their thought is. So if it gets set at 2 parts per million, how are you going to get it back up to 3,000 parts or 10 parts or 20 parts per million? And so you have this kind of back and forth between these international, Canadian, here in the States. But I see both sides of it. If you get the 2 ppm, at least you got your foot in the door and you can start to feed laying hens. And I see the other side. If you do that, then now you're going to have a hard time getting it off that 2 parts per million. So that's the two sides of it. And I agree with both sides to a point. But what is so crazy about this whole thing is the chickens were fed a hemp meal, and that hemp meal is full of protein. Well, I'll tell you, we were back 25 years ago, we were buying this meal, this meal, basically what it is you put seed, you extrude the oil, and then the meal that's left over, it looks like those Tootsie Rolls, it's just these long, and it's all, anyway, I went up to Canada, and this guy had just a whole big warehouse full of hemp meal. And we were giving him 5 cents a pound, brought it down here. We were feeding cattle with it for the hemp fed beef company. And all of a sudden he realized that he could get the protein out of that hemp meal. He was making more money off the damn protein than he was the oil. So he was throwing all that away. And now we're talking about feeding this to chickens, which is not economically feasible. So this is a fight over something that's probably, if it does happen, it'll be 10, 15 years where we've got millions of acres are growing and the price comes down. But until then, I mean, nobody's going to actually go out and feed hemp meal to chickens. But but we have this thing going on that, it doesn't, I wrote an article, I put it up on LinkedIn, and, it's like the I forget what I call it, the battle over millionths, or what hole has Alice fallen into this time? It's crazy. I mean, but the interesting thing about the hemp industry is all the curves and I mean, there's never a dull moment. There's always something going on. Somebody's trying to say that, doesn't need any fertilizer, doesn't need any, very little water, it'll grow in any soil. I mean, if you listen long enough, you can hear anything about, the hemp industry, because there you have most of the hippies are gone. And I used to be a hippie back in, 50 years ago.
Did you have like really long hair, Joe?
Yeah, until I was like, I think at 18, I think is when I cut my hair. But yeah, I thought I was going to be one of the Beatles.
I love it. That's great.
So the hemp industry is evolving, and it will end up, in 10 years it'll be a major industry. But I tell people just temper your expectations. If people expect that this is going to be a great industry in 4 or 5 years and it's still not, then they give up. But you just have to set your sights on the idea of getting it done and leave. It's like steering a ship. You got to turn the wheel, but it's going to take you a couple of miles of ocean to get that thing turned around.
Yeah, well, at the pace that the federal government's moving, it looks like 10 years is even tough to say, because they can't even get this bill passed to draw this separation between industrial, hemp, between the agricultural hemp and the other side. It's
well, what they ought to be doing? They ought to be treating this like the what was that, the New Deal, or what did Roosevelt do? Was it the New Deal? That's what it was called.
The New Deal, not the Green New Deal. The New Deal.
The New Deal. But they ought, the government ought to be funding these processing facilities and giving industries tax breaks for doing this to help the farmers, because anything that comes off the farm, and people don't know this, it's called the multiplier effect, because they use it in tobacco. If a tobacco farmer grows a crop and he gets paid $2,000 for an acre of tobacco, then that money goes to the grocer who spends it somewhere else, or it go to the attorney who spends it somewhere else, and they spend it somewhere else. That money multiplies. That $2,000 that he puts into the economy turns into $20,000. So that's the thing about farmers that people don't understand, is when the farmers produce income off the land, that income gets spread out through the community. And why aren't we helping the damn farmers? What's the last time we've done anything for American farmers? It's in the small farmer. We give those the big agribusiness.
Yeah, I've just seen foreign corporations and companies buying up farmers and giving every disincentive for family farms to get out of the business, making it harder for them.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I hate to be political. We try to avoid those things, but based on, we've got a lot going on in U.S. politics and Republican versus Democrat, but what platform do you think is going to be more friendly towards your cause of industrial or agricultural hemp?
You mean Republican or Democrat?
Yes, sir.
I think it's agnostic. I don't think it makes a difference who's in. The industry's it's on a trajectory of its own. Right now it's just mainly how are we going to feed or fund, I guess is a better word. How are we going to fund the industry and kickstart it? How are we going to do that? And it doesn't matter if a Republican or Democrat are in there. It's like
but it doesn't seem like, if you look at this bill that's out there, it seems to have bipartisan support, but it's not going anywhere. So it's like I can see what you're saying, but it just seems like people need to get their heads out of their rear ends when it comes to
but that takes me back to the money. I mean, I don't care if I had $100 million, I guarantee I could go up to Capitol Hill and get this thing taken care of real quick, because all these politicians are bought and paid for. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. They're
Joy,
all.
Did he say $100? Get him a check for $100 million. Sorry,
$100 million. Hey, I'll take a check for $100 million for you, Brian. I'll just.
No, I thought you said $100. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'll tell you a real quick story. There was a guy, Gatewood Galbraith, here in Kentucky. He ran for governor 4 times on the cannabis. He wanted everything legal, and there was it was called the Bottrop investigation. And they caught these, there's 3 or 4 legislators that got paid like $200 a piece to pass this bill for gambling for trotting horses. They called it the bot trot scandal. But they for $200. So Gatewood got there. He said, "Hell, guys," he said, "if I had known you could buy a legislator for $200, he said cannabis would have been legal a long time ago here in Kentucky." So that whole thing. Anybody that believes there, I will say there are a few legislators up there that probably do vote their conscience and listen to their. But when a big gigantic company comes in and says, "Look, you got legislator, the representatives have 2 years in Kentucky, and the senators have 4 years or 6."
So as we wrap up, Joe, is there anything that sort of the listening audience can do to help this cause?
Well, I think.
Besides writing a check for $100 million.
Right. No, I just think if your legislator is, state legislators, talk to them about, how do we help the farmers? How are we going to be, and how is our state going to be involved in this hemp revolution that's happening? And it's revolutionary. Think of it like this. When's the last time a major crop has been introduced into American agriculture? Back in the 1700s, and it was soybeans. There's never been a new crop introduced, and it took soybeans almost 150 years to become a mainstream crop, and that was because nobody concentrated on the supply chain and funding and building and researching in the industry. So to me, it's talk to your legislators, talk to your county. I'm trying to get a facility built here in Kentucky, but it takes funding, and that a lot of that funding can come in the form of grants from the government or subsidies. We could tell your legislators to put subsidies in there for any industry that uses hemp in their processing facilities. There's ways of skinning that cat. But, speak to the legislators. How can we help the farmers? That's, to me, it's about allowing the farmers to make enough money to stay on the damn farm. My son's on a farm. If his wife wasn't a school teacher, they couldn't afford to live on a farm. It's crazy.
It's so sad to hear. It really is. I mean, we have to support the American farmer, and I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of these hemp farmers and tobacco farmers in Kentucky. I must have visited 132 farms in Kentucky, and I mean, just good, solid people working very, very hard, trying to make a living and trying to find an alternative to that tobacco, right? To that tobacco industry, and trying to make their way in hemp, and it's difficult. So we need to do what we can to support this cause. And Joe, thanks for the good fight that you started, in the 90s, and you continue to fight here. And how can people contact you, Joe, if they want to reach out to you?
They can reach out on me on LinkedIn, and I've got some great posts up right now. I think I've got like 8,000 hits on that one that what hole is Alice falling into this time? And
I love that title.
the other one was about these people calling it intoxicating hemp, or these other words that they mix in with hemp. And that's, to me, hemp is one thing. There's no such thing as intoxicating hemp. I understand what everybody's talking about. I think is the Delta 8 and the HHC and the synthetics, the loopholes through the farm. That's what they're all talking about. They're going to get rid of that, and I agree with it.
Yeah, it doesn't make your cause any easier.
Well, it's not, no, because I'm not against cannabinoids, but don't be going in and start changing, adding stuff, chemicals to it to change and do something Mother Nature didn't do. That's, to me, no, any natural cannabinoid. If you're cannabinoid farmers and you're not doing anything with chemicals to change the makeup of it, that's fine. But when you start going into changing the structure of what Mother Nature said out there, I tried D8 one time and I would never do it again.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have a loved one that tried it, ended up in the emergency room.
Yeah, it's not something, and they say it helps some people, and it may, but I'm of the mind that there's a lot of cannabinoids in there. I think they're doing a D8 because they can get that legally. They can't get the D9, the THC, so they do this as a replacement. So once the THC is legal, the people that need it will be able to access it. And you won't need that D8 and D10 and all the other stuff, that this synthetic stuff they're coming up with.
Yeah, well, the saga continues. And Joe, thanks for joining us. It's always great to have you. As I said, you're really one of our favorite hemp people, and we've got your back. We're behind you and the work you're trying to do. So thanks for joining us, and appreciate you being on again.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Taylor. I really appreciate it. I mean, Joey. No, sorry about that.
We switched it up on you this time, Joe.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you did. It tricked